Welcome to FSEL 630, Introduction to Open Source and Internet Investigations. This is a course that we'll be discussing some of the most interesting techniques currently in use across government, private cybersecurity firms, and people around the world. We are going to use three terms in this course which are essentially interchangeable: Internet investigations, online research, and open source intelligence, also known as OSINT. Basically, for the purposes of our class, they mean the same thing. So let's dive right into this very exciting and timely topic. So open source investigations or open source intelligence, OSINT, is the collection of information publicly available on the internet. It does not involve hacking or breaking into password-protected areas of websites or developing confidential informants to pass along secret data. We will be discussing some of the issues surrounding the techniques and processes around this type of activity, including obtaining search warrants for internet service providers or other situations. But as you'll see, they often include lots of information available to the general public to get that probable cause finding. We'll talk more about that later. This course will explore the world available online for investigators and analysts that can help solve crimes, lead to the identification and mitigation of security vulnerabilities, and generally protect systems and networks. We will be mainly focused on the process and methodology, not necessarily the tool specifics, although we will include some of them. Remember that sometimes in a professional setting, these tools aren't always free. There's premium services that can greatly assist in moving the case forward. We really won't get into those in this topic. We start from the proposition that as professionals, whether it's cybersecurity researchers, network administrators, digital forensic examiners, or even criminal investigators, we must identify and collect evidence necessary for someone else to make a good decision. That evidence is all about getting the most accurate and detailed information. Internet investigations are about gathering information that enables the decision makers to have more confidence or better understanding of the problem or issue. We often bring a context to something that may not have it, and that's where the value lies. If you look at what OSINT is defined as in the Public Law 109-163, intelligence produced from publicly available information collected, exploited, and disseminated in a timely manner to an appropriate audience for the purpose of addressing a specific intelligence requirement. So let's break down open source investigations even more. Some people think it's all about Googling better, but it's not. It's really a comprehensive and systematic knowledge of the techniques and methodology that help surface information and bring that information into a clearer focus. It's about analyzing the data and helping to bring some nuance or perspective to it. We do this in every phase of our investigation, from planning, collecting, assessing, analyzing, collating, and then providing a response. Much of the data we'll be talking about during this course is publicly available. There will be instances where we fuse the open source information with other data that we do know. This usually occurs in a criminal case or an internal investigation, and enables us to use other data points, also called all source information, that brings together different pieces of the puzzle. For example, we may need to bring in financial data or evidence collected from a digital device. But when we're talking specifically about OSINT, we're talking about information that is available to pretty much anyone with an internet connection. There are other kinds of data like government data, reports, or statistics that may also be available through a process called the Freedom of Information Act, but that's beyond the scope of this course. Our primary focus will be online, publicly available, easy to obtain information. Breaking down OSINT into 4 main categories is another way of reiterating what the previous slide said. Open source generally includes 4 main categories: media information, government information, professional or academic information, and the internet. While we may touch on the media information, professional, academic, or even government data, because more and more of this information does actually reside on the web, it's not the primary area we'll be exploring in this course. Our focus will be primarily on the 4th category, the internet or web, and let's talk about how that can be applied in real life. OSINT in real life has a long list of applications and use cases. We certainly can't list them all here, but they have applications on both the public and the private side. For example, on the private side, a private investigator who is employed by a divorce attorney may find instances of potential infidelity online. There's a growing set of experts who are able to set up profiles on dating apps like Tinder and OkCupid, but we won't cover those at all. Journalists who want to expose human rights abuses and corruption are huge OSINT investigators. Similarly, employers who are looking to hire a partner or high-paying executive may also engage OSINT investigators on the private side to conduct due diligence before signing a contract. During this course, we will try to provide use cases and scenarios that bridge both of these worlds, but there will be a heavy bent towards the public side, primarily the criminal investigative area. This is primarily for 2 main reasons. First, it's my background and what I've done my entire career. But secondly, and more importantly, the standard for a criminal conviction is beyond a reasonable doubt, a very high standard. The logic is this: if you can do the hard stuff, everything else will be easy. There are 3 general types of OSINT projects. The first is strategic. These are long-term, long-focus, compiling an analysis of the landscape of a given problem, whether it's a business issue, a cyber issue, or something like an intelligence assessment. For example, a strategic open source project could focus on the Goga ransomware flavor. This is a higher order, bigger picture project that looks at trends and issues. A research project is similar in scope, but somewhat smaller. For example, in the business context, it may look at specific geopolitical issues before launching a product in Latvia. Think of this as a specific research project that has very concrete objectives. Finally, the operational or tactical project, which will be most of what we discuss, is case specific. For example, I want to know about the web domain that is located in the Dominican Republic based on its suffix that appears to be marketing illegal investment opportunities to U.S. customers. I still want to know as much as I can about it as possible, but much of it is within the technical confines of the target, the website itself. Other examples could be identifying addresses or phone numbers of people, or emails, or finding the origin of an ad that's peddling counterfeit pharmaceuticals. If we break down these 2 project types, research and operational, we can think about them in terms of 5 main activities. This is the background of the engagement. Who is the customer and why do they want the information? In the criminal context, the prosecutor is the customer, and the purpose is to obtain admissible evidence for court to secure a conviction. In a family law matter, the client may be the divorced wife seeking additional alimony, and based on her information, there may be evidence of the husband's online financial activities that could be useful for her. Next, we look at the assessment, the needs assessment. What type of time and budget do we need to adhere to? How much work will this case be? and what are the expected outcomes. Then we get into planning our investigation. First, we need to research the area of consideration, especially if we do not know much about it. For example, I worked on a lot of aviation cases, so I got to know that world pretty well. But if I needed to work a dark web drug case, I would have a lot of pre-research and study that I would need to do in order to get familiar with it. The same thing is if you're doing a corporate search on a specific industry or country. These require additional things to take into account before you really get started. We're going to skip the data mining, person, and business investigations since we'll spend most of the time in our course on these, but I do quickly want to highlight the monitoring. We won't talk a lot about this in this course, but there's a whole subset of practitioners who monitor news and websites for reputational risks, brand issues, and other potential problems. It's a growing industry and requires some technical skills to help keep everything moving. In this course, we're going to read a lot of case opinions, unsealed criminal complaints, and search warrant affidavits, and indictments that include open source investigation. I do this because I think it's important to see how these cases come together. There's an expanding area of the law that deals with electronic discovery, digital forensics, and technology investigations. To be successful in this area as a professional, it's critical to know how open source fits with everything else. The statistics are pretty undeniable. Our lives revolve around being able to be online. As we continue to move into the digital age, the ability to identify, access, and analyze this information will only continue to grow. Social media websites and other types of sites can have significant information to help criminal investigators reconstruct past events and help determine whether there's an evidence of a crime. For example, it may be that a robber posts a photo on his Facebook account that shows him with the victim's laptop, or a fraudster uses a Twitter account to promote a Ponzi scheme. All of these can assist in easily understood ways, but there also may be subtle clues too. For example, it may be helpful to identify co-conspirators to provide meeting or logistical information. It may also help identify things that capture a fugitive. In one case, a Facebook timeline was analyzed to identify when the person was most likely to be asleep, based on the time and frequency of their postings. This enabled the SWAT team to locate and arrest the suspect without incident. As we've said, online investigation works best when it's part of a broader plan of attack that incorporates other traditional investigative tools. In an intrusion case, the network logs often tell the story, but standing alone they can only provide specific details. When open source information is used to help narrow down who may be behind the attacks by researching IP addresses and other artifacts, it creates a much fuller picture of what happened and who was responsible. That's why open source investigation is so important and so valuable. Of course, open source investigation also has its limitations. Not everything is perfect. Sometimes we need help and set expectations up front. Just can't push a magic button and have it all spit out everything you want. Many times in looking for a person, I need to go to 5 different sites because each one will have one little nugget that I can collect. Once I put them all together, then I can really provide a much better product. There are also technical limitations. Believe it or not, most public records are still not online, but are either kept in paper form or archived on a server. That is why utilizing other methods like the Freedom of Information Act or things like litigation discovery are still critical in accessing the data. Of course, much of what we will be working on is the need to authenticate it. Finally, we need to be wary of rabbit holes. Novice investigators are also often the victim of these issues, but sometimes it also plagues veteran investigators too. Rabbit holes are red herrings, clues designed to mislead or waste time and effort pursuing something that's not worthwhile. Balancing the needs of the case with the time and resources available is really an art form. So there are 5 key questions that we need to help us about where we are at in our investigations that help us keep on track and focused on the bottom line. In planning our engagement, we need to be able to know what we are gathering, and more importantly, what we have missed. When we find information, we need to see how it fits in with the other evidence we've collected. We always need to find authentic and verifiable information, because if we include information that's false or misleading, we will be doing a disservice to the client and ourselves, as well as possibly violating our professional ethical obligations. Having a skeptical mindset is very important, and that's why we always need to be asking, how can we be sure? Another good way to think about how a professional online investigator is to think is in terms of what skills or knowledge we need. First, we need to have a strong technical proficiency. This is because we may be called upon to explain the information, how it was obtained, and how it is traceable. That's why certifications in digital forensics or specialized training in internet artifact collection is very important. We are often also called to go under the hood to review how a computer works, so that's a key piece as well. Second, we need to be detail-oriented, but also consider the big picture. This may seem at odds, but they're really important to keep everything in mind. Both require a good method of organizing the information we find, because we will likely need to write a report at the end of our engagement. We also need to be professionally skeptical and question everything. In addition, we have to be creative, know where information resides, identify patterns, red flags, and anomalies. And we have to be persistent, but to a point. Remember our discussion about rabbit holes. In the business world, a client usually doesn't have the luxury to spend unlimited funds on this research. The law of diminishing returns is a concept that's good to remember. In law enforcement, other cases need attention. There will always be the one that got away, but that's the reality of living in a world with limited resources and time. At the foundation is to be a professional, ethical, and law-abiding. If we don't have credibility, it will be very difficult for us to work in this space. I hope that this is going to be a very fun course, and as interesting for you to take as it has been for me to put together. We're going to cover a lot of concepts, but ultimately the goal of this course is to help you assemble a toolkit of methodologies, websites, resources, and information to help you become a good open source investigator. More importantly, it will help you develop the analytical framework that is a fundamental requirement for successful investigators. Thinking and doing are important because they go together. You cannot separate them. We're going to cover a lot of information, both technical and practical, but the goal is to help you think and explore. We will be exploring a lot. If you have any questions or issues along the way, don't hesitate to let me know. Post in the discussion board and we can discuss it there. If it's a private matter or something you need to speak with me personally, please let me know and email me. So there we go, open source investigations. Let's go ahead and jump in and get started.